The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel.
Hello, friends, and welcome to our next episode of the HX Collective podcast, where today we are going to have a conversation about beauty and how that adds to and elevates human flourishing. We're in for such a treat because today's guest is someone who I love. And when I say love, I mean love, love. I can't wait for you all to meet Shay Moinuddin. I got that right, Shay, didn't I?
You did. You did.
Shay is not only a phenomenal influencer inside of the beauty industry, she is a trained and aesthetic nurse, and she's the clinic director for the Few Institute. And if you are in Chicago, you know the Few Institute. So I can't wait for her to share a bit about her work and her mission and how she engages in the industry of all things beauty. I'm also going to tell you that she is a phenomenal mother, friend, and influencer in every aspect of our personal lives. So today I'll be a first conversation with Miss Shay, but you're going to have an opportunity to hear from her again as we roll out additional episodes of today's podcast. So Shay, thank you for saying yes to be with us today. And to go a little deeper with our audience, do you mind just giving a little bit more of your background? Tell us a little bit about your work, and it'll set the context for our conversation when we think about beauty and self-care and what that means to the human experience.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Debbie. I'm a huge fan too. So the feeling's mutual, honey. So my name is Shay. I am a mother of two adult kids in their 20s, one that's graduated from college, one that is still in college. I grew up in a very small town in Ohio. My family is originally from India, but I was born and raised in the US. I lived in Chicago almost 30 years now. And for work, I am, as you mentioned, an aesthetic nurse. I have been at the same plastic surgery practice for almost 20 years. We're in downtown Chicago. We also have an office in Los Angeles, and I'm licensed out there too, so I go out there occasionally. And I also am a media contributor. I do a lot of local beauty segments, television segments with all the major news networks. So yeah, I do a little bit of everything, and I love my job.
Well, it shows. When you love something as much as I know you do, you also like world-class category of one expert in your field. And I know that you and the Few Institute are sought after on a national level. So what a treat for us to get some insider perspective as we think about the work that you're doing and how that really contributes to lifting a person's human experience. So first, talk a little bit about the practice. And I'd love to know, just for our audience's benefit, some of the things that occur within the clinic and within the larger practice. And then what is it about your work that you love so much?
Yeah. So, about our practice, we, like I said, have been here exactly 19 years. We are a plastic surgery practice. We're primarily focused on cosmetics. So all elective procedures, we do everything from face, body, but we primarily focus on the face. The doctor that I worked with for almost 20 years, he is very well respected, very kind of world renowned. We're always top 10 Newsweek magazine for facelifts and eye surgery, et cetera. So I'd say we're at the cutting edge of technology. And in Chicago, we're kind of the game, I would say. And so a few years ago, maybe about 8 years ago, we opened up a practice in Los Angeles. We collaborated with Gwyneth Paltrow from Goop. And we actually, long story short, did her aesthetic summit, and it kind of snowballed into something bigger. And we ended up opening up a practice in Los Angeles. I got licensed out there and I started seeing patients out there. We're very much kind of a destination center for anything related to beauty and plastic surgery in the Midwest. And my job, what I love about it is everything. I mean, I feel like, the biggest thing that I love are my patients. And, I've had the same patients almost because I've been in the industry itself over 20 years. So I've been seeing my same patients for over 20 years, some of them, and now I'm starting to treat their daughters. So it's kind of like full circle. Like it's amazing. And, I'm treating the moms and the daughters and getting everybody ready for weddings now. And it's been so lovely. I feel so thankful to be able to be part of their journeys. And they feel like I call them patients, but a lot of them feel like family to me.
I love that. Well, Shay, when you think about the industry you're operating in, and you've already highlighted sort of a subtext of the question, that I know many of your patients are indeed women. What do you think are some of the common misconceptions about the beauty industry?
I think that I think there's a huge misconception that people who partake in these services are vain, and I think that that's very false. And I will say, even though I haven't studied this, that there is a direct correlation between how people feel that like they look on the outside, whether it's not just their beauty, but like their hair, their outfit that day, their jewelry that day, their nails, whatever it is, that reflects on how they feel on the inside and their attitude and their demeanor and their confidence. And so I think that the thought that people who partake in these services, Botox, face, whatever it is, that they're doing it out of vanity or they're doing it to look good for others. But oftentimes what I find is that people are doing it for themselves.
Yeah. Well, knowing that you have a lot of female clientele, it almost brings to mind for me that in the spirit of, even if people were doing it for vanity purposes, there's almost like this misconception, like there's something wrong with that. Like that, to care about your appearance somehow makes you shallow, or to somebody who, wants to project, a put together, confident image, like somehow that gets villainized. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I'm imagining, women, well, I'll speak for myself. You come in and you want to engage, you want to look at your best, both of us are over the age of 50, except one of us doesn't look like it. But let's talk about that, because it's almost like this element of vanity and shame kind of go hand in hand, and there's nothing that diminishes the human experience or human flourishing like shame. Say a little bit more about that, because I think, again, I think that's building into that misconception.
And it's so funny you say that because I literally went to a dinner this week and it's of somebody that I've known for a very long time, over I'd say 15 years. And when I first got into this industry, I was talking about, oh my gosh, you should try Botox. You should try Botox. And it was first FDA approved in 2002 for cosmetic use. And so she's like, I never tried that. I would never do that. I would never put poison in my face. Now, I'm not joking to you, Debbie. I saw her at this dinner and she's like, can we talk about Botox? Because now, fast forward, she's 15 years older and she's seeing all her friends, not that you have to do what your friends are doing, but ask, like doing these treatments. It's almost like analogous to getting your teeth cleaned nowadays. Is most people are doing something cosmetic, whether it's Botox or not, skincare, facials, whatever it is. But the shame involved with it, I don't know. And I will say now, because it's becoming so mainstream and, the good and the bad of social media, unfortunately, will kind of, it will give a lot of false information out there, or maybe a bad image of what bad work looks like. However, the reality is, because people are being so transparent now about what they're doing, that I think a lot of people are understanding, like, hey, if you have filler, it doesn't have to look fake or bad or, unnatural. And so I do think that it's kind of, there's evolution of where we started and where we're going now, that people are thinking about it more as like a normal treatment in their, listen, we're living longer, right? Like Americans are living longer. We're staying in the workforce longer. I have a lot of male patients now that are coming in and they feel like they're competing with younger people. And these are men that are CEOs of big companies, but they feel like they're in rooms full of 20 and 30-year-old men and they want to feel like they look their best. And so I think that vanity part of it is starting to fade away, that perception, but we still have to battle it every day. And I do it in my personal life when I see family members that are like, I can't believe, you inject filler for a living. But I don't know. I feel like, sometimes people show their confidence with the car they drive, with the purse they carry, and maybe it's with, getting a fresh set of teeth, whatever it is. So, it is something that is out there, but I think it's getting a little bit better now because we're seeing better work in social media. So
I love that. Well, I was going to ask you about the men. So you started to go in that direction, and it's curious too because that sense of wanting to project and look our best, recognizing how people are having relationships with their aging. I was recently reminded at the Golden Girls, one of fantastic sitcoms, of our lifetime, and at the time how young, and I'm using young, that the actresses were there portraying elderly, aged women, and they were all in like their 50s. And it's so funny to me how just the transition of what is old is really shifting. But say a little bit more about the men who come into your practice. Like, what again, you said wanting to feel looking your best, but can you give us any other insights about how that's starting to become more normed in your work?
Yeah, I mean, before, we've always had male patients. And, in the beginning, I'd say like maybe 15 plus years ago, it was only to do like a little bit of Botox, like a little bit of around their crow's feet, between their brows. They felt like they looked angry. So we would inject between their brows. And now they're actually coming in and asking about surgery. So that's been a big shift because men really never talked about surgery before. And now it's becoming a little bit more acceptable. And so we do a lot of male plastic surgery. And Dr. Few, the surgeon that I work with, is very, very well known for face. And so they're flying in from all over the world, really. And I will say, again, these men are not coming in to like to attract a woman. It's never that. That's never the conversation. I would say 9 times out of 10, the conversation is that they are at the top of their game professionally, and they feel like their appearance has aged, and they want to make sure that they can have this appearance of youthfulness because they are not competing, but they're in rooms full of younger men. And these men, younger, what a 20, 30-year-old man looks like. I mean, they're lean and they're no gray hair and no wrinkles. And, listen, I mean, it's hard getting older when you feel a certain way. Like I feel like I'm 25, but I'm not. And I think that they want to feel like they look on the outside the way they feel on the inside.
So that's it there. And I think that's true for women and men. And I love that men are starting to have more confidence and comfort in seeking this type of self care. Well, self care is a huge range. And you said, when you look across the work that you do in social media, as you said, you're a personality. It's very much associated with this subject area. And I think a lot about the work of the OTX Collective. And our mission and in this podcast and in this community is that everybody we bring into our orbit is united around a mission of elevating human flourishing, like putting things into the world that allow people to awaken some level of joy, fulfillment, wholeness, so that flourishing, that joy is available. And when we think about even the subject of self-care and the human experience, how do you connect the dots? So if I say we're united in elevating human flourishing, what's the work you're doing, and how would you define the role that self-care plays in that human experience?
Yeah, I will say that it's been a blessing to be able to see the kind of patient experience of someone who comes in and they're coming in maybe for surgery or primarily for surgery, say for instance, and maybe it's a woman who just got divorced and she hasn't really been out on the dating scene for a while and she's not feeling great about herself. And then to see them go, and it's the same person after surgery. It's the same person after surgery. But when they feel like they look their best, and listen, someone will come into us and I'm looking at maybe because I look at people very objectively, and I'm looking at, oh, maybe they can do this, this, and this, but they point out something that bothers them that's completely different than what I'm seeing. So oftentimes we never know what's bothering somebody, right? And so they'll describe, I might be looking at their neck is kind of heavy. They could care less about their neck. They're thinking about something else, but just maybe making them feel better, not fixing the problem, but making them feel better with a surgical intervention or cosmetic intervention or a non-surgical intervention, making them feel better about the way they look, the self-confidence, that person is a different person. And I do think that in talking about human flourishing, that's what it's all about is right is feeling like you can be the best version of yourself. And again, it's not being vain. it's just that confidence that you get when you feel good about who you are, that you feel comfortable in your own skin. And so I think that's the biggest thing is feeling comfortable in your own skin. That sometimes comes with just aging, like getting older. You start to feel like you let go of the stupid stuff and you just feel better about who you are. And I think that part of it is your appearance too. Like that's why we get our hair colored. We do all these things. We exercise, hopefully. And it's part of it, right? And I think that the beauty industry is evolving. Surgeries are getting safer. Treatments are becoming like leading towards non-surgical now, non-invasive. So people who don't want to ever get cut. I have a lot of people who never will ever get cut. There are other things they do maybe to make them feel like they look their best. And so, and this is not just now, Debbie, like this is ancient times. Like, you think about how like cave people would use like berries for lipstick. Like, why was that? Like they didn't have mirrors. Like this has been going on forever, right? And so like I just think that the plastic surgery world has become so like well known because of a lot of very influential like celebrities, et cetera, talking about it. And I mean, it's been great for us as a business, but I also think that there's a deeper reason that people partake in this. And I do think that it contributes to what you talk about human flourishing, because it really does make us feel like we are the best versions of ourselves.
Shay, we've known each other now for more than 2 decades, and I just had an aha moment. I love this podcast for this reason. This happens. Like you just said something, and my whole my whole perspective just shifted. And here's what you said. When we're talking about this idea of coming in to be, well, first you said earlier, sort of the inside of who they are as a person, when the person feels like it's being reflected on the outside, that there's power in that, where that feels like you're more congruent with the best version of yourself. But what really stood out and what you just said, and I've never thought about your work through this, is that right now it is very acceptable in self care to read books on nutritious eating and meditation and practices for breathing, or how you can build your positive psychology and engaging in coaching or therapy as a mechanism for human flourishing. And it seems like all of that self effort is lauded. It's deemed responsible. It's like you're doing the work, but somehow the idea that I would also want to do something aesthetically, how that has been on the outside, it's actually on the inside. So, in the same way that I want to flourish as a human being by working on my psyche and my heart and my spirit and my joy and my trauma and all those things, that this is a piece of that. And I never connected the dots. I would have thought of it different. Like bullying is just another expression of health and well being, and you just somehow put the negativity on it being a luxury or that it's not worthwhile as an investment. But how can one inspire people to have confidence that wanting to look your best is somehow not villainized? It's actually in the same way that I want to be good at my breath work or I want to work on strengthening my core, having my outside, my aesthetic externally being a part of that holistic well-being. I've just never connected the dots like that before. What can you say about that?
Yeah, I do think that it's interesting now because some of these services now you can see that they're part of your healthcare saving plan. Like you can use those like funds in your insurance money to pay for some of these like cosmetic like microdermabrasion, Botox if you're sweating a lot, like things that were never always considered cosmetic. I think even just the insurance industry is looking at it at like this is part of overall wellness. And so I will tell you right now, if we talk again in 10 years, this will continue to change and evolve where people are realizing that in even medicine, we're realizing that part of the way you feel about yourself, depression, your happiness, it really part of like the way you appear to the outside is, a reflection of, you know, being able to partake in some of these services. And so I do think that, how you feel like we talked about on the inside and matching what you look like on the outside, they're very intertwined. And I will tell you, I think that as we continue on, these services will be more and more accepted, especially even, again, with men and, older people. Like I have patients, believe it or not, that are in their 80s and that still come in. And you would never think a woman, they're in their 80s. You would always think that these women that are in their 80s, they have other things to worry about. Like, aren't they worried about more about their health and this and that? They come in, these my Gold Coast patients come in head to toe, dressed like to the nines, gorgeous. They're going out to lunch, they're doing all these things, and they care about the way they look. They care about the way they look. And so they're coming in for little services and whatever it is. We're obviously not operating on them. But I mean, it just shows, I think, that the trajectory of beauty and wellness, it's all combined, it's all intertwined. And I think it's going to become more and more acceptable as we continue to age.
That's fantastic. Well, I love that idea of good news. And I love the idea of seeing the work that you're doing and how the evolution of the beauty industry and the work of self care, how that is so inextricably connected to the human experience and for people to really flourish. And I also appreciate how what you're describing is an extension of how we manage, again, the mental part of this, our mental health, our sense of confidence and security in a lot of ways. Why wouldn't we want to be able to integrate if we're doing all that work on the inside to remove the shame and stigma of also having the aesthetic or the outside sort of match our insides? You've been such a terrific guest, and I am so excited for us to pick up our next conversation where we're going to talk about what it means to build friendships after the age of 50. So I know that'll be another great episode, but until then, any closing thoughts or advice or encouragement? So if somebody is listening today, male or female, and they've been thinking about stepping into have, a procedure or to just examine, how they might freshen their outside to match their inside, any closing advice as we wrap?
I would say to not be afraid, to not worry about what other people think. And it's private, right? Don't feel like you have to talk about it or share it. I mean, a lot of things, and I've been doing this for a very long time, and I'm open with my girlfriends about what I do, but I don't even share it to the masses. Like, I don't put it on social media. So it's a personal journey. It's private. It's your health. And I would say to not be afraid. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, and if you're doing it for yourself, to explore it. I mean, there's so much in our world. Like, our industry is evolving so much. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. There's something for everybody, whether you're younger, you're older. I don't think there's anything wrong or anyone should feel any shame in wanting to look their best and feel their best. And, I would say if you're interested in exploring it, now is the time, because it's never been more popular. And to do your research too, obviously, like, unfortunately our industry is kind of turning into the wild, wild west, because there are, unqualified providers on every corner now in every big city. And so I would just say to do your research, to be smart about it, to not cut corners. Unfortunately, sometimes if it looks too good to be true, and to also, the one thing I will say is to look at social media with a grain of salt. I will say I spend half of my day nowadays talking to younger people. Talking young people off the ledge with filters and having this false sense of what beauty is. A lot of it's lighting, most of it's filters. And it's sad for our daughters now, because the images aren't even real. And so that's the other thing I would say is don't compare yourself to what you're seeing on social media, because more than not, it's false. And so no one looks like a filter, and we shouldn't look like filters. And we're beautiful when we have flaws and wrinkles, gray hair, and that's what makes us unique. And if you're doing it for the right reasons, I say go for it.
Well, thank you, Shay. What a great conversation. I can't wait for our next one. For everyone, our show's contact information will be in the show notes. I'll send some love. Take care.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.